he loses his power, and it seems like it works really well with kids. We sometimes miss the fact that it's not really meant for kids, it's meant for all of us. And there's a lot more to the story and the choices that were made. When I look at the Bible, I think it's important to understand that there's an intelligence. The Bible's not a historical artifact where we just get the records. It's like whatever pieces of clay tablets that we still have that are records from the past. That the weaving together of the Bible is deliberate, and that the verses that are in the Bible are there on purpose, and there's design in it. And the story of Samson, whereas I talked about the book of Judges covers a period of 400 years, so there's not one eyewitness, right, that's there for all 400 years. So it's stories that are woven together by a later writer, weaves them all together on purpose. The story of Samson is one of those stories that happens within a generation of the person that is writing, that weaves together the book. So Samson would have been a hero that everybody knew about. When we get to the story of Samson, we're going to get a couple stories. We get about 3 big stories about Samson after we get his startup. So we get 3 big stories. Now, imagine that we had some great general, some great freedom fighter that was freeing people for 20 years. And we all knew him. So the writer of Judges picks 3 stories to tell us about this guy who is our parents' generation. He doesn't pick the biggest battles. He doesn't pick all the battles. He doesn't pick the greatest victories. He picks 3 little things. And really, for us, it'd be like if I said, what are generals that we have? Famous generals we have, like Patton. Like if I said Patton, there's a lot of guys who are like, yeah, Patton, Battle of the Bulge, right? Or, Sicily, or, we'd have all these memories of what we knew about Patton and what a great general he was and all those stories. Those are not the stories that make it to the Bible. He is deliberately taking these stories because even though God uses Samson powerfully, there's a problem with Samson. And it's one of those things where, God can work powerfully in our life, but just because he works powerfully in life doesn't mean that we're working from the right motivations. Does that make sense? And in a sense, Samson, when we see Samson, Samson's a bit like Israel at this point, who came in with all these great ideas to represent Yahweh and to do all these great motivations from Yahweh, and to, as for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. That's the idea that they walk into Judges with. And what we see is, as for me and my house, we will do what we want to do, when we want to do it, how we want to do it, is what ends up showing up there, and that's not the same thing. So the failure of Samson is the same failure that we see. We see it as a general with Samson, but we see it also with the Israelites. And it's a warning for all of us that just because we put a cross on our collar, or a cross on our house, or a cross on whatever, just because we say we want to serve Yahweh, that we want to serve God, that saying we want to serve God and serving God are often 2 different things. That we need to make sure that we are saying, your will be done. That's the idea, is aligning that. Now, I will tell you this. While Samson's a cautionary tale for Israel, Samson's a cautionary tale for great men, Samson's a cautionary tale for us, I will tell you the one person that shows up in the story of Samson as being gracious and merciful and loving and compassionate is the same main character through all the Judges, which is God. So, you guys ready? Here we go. So, starting here, chapter 13, if you want to open up your Bibles, chapter 13. Hey, Juliet, on the entryway in there, we have Spanish Bibles. Yes. Do you want to go grab one? Just, you got to show her where it's at. Figure she could probably read.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So starting out right here, you get a sense. Again, the Israelites did evil in the Lord's sight, and the Lord handed them over to the Philistines, who oppressed them for 40 years. Okay. So now a lot of the action that we've been looking at before has been up in the northern area. That's where we've been at.
I have the same one at home.
Oh, good. Well, there, that'll work. So that way you can read along. It would, just because I don't read well, and if she reads Spanish, that would work well for her. So looking at Judges chapter 13, again, the Israelites did evil in the Lord's sight. So we've been looking up in the north area, and now what we're looking at is we're looking down in Judah. And Judah was doing so good, right? That was like when last we left them, it was like Caleb's was Judah, and then Othniel was Judah, and Shamgar did stuff down in Judah, and some good stuff in Judah. So you're like, oh, but it has been 400 years is where we're picking up. This is 400 years in the land, and we're going to notice some things that happened since then. In those days, a man named Manoah from the tribe of Dan lived in Zorah, and his wife was unable to become pregnant, and they had no children. The angel of the Lord appeared to Manoah's wife and said, even though you have been unable to have children, you will soon become pregnant and give birth to a son. That sounds great, right? Now, the Bible, it's like a spider web, right? There's like all these threads, and we hit this one, and this one rung through with a whole bunch of stories. What stories pop up in your head when you see this? Mary, absolutely. What else?
That one guy's wife who also knows Mary.
Oh, Elizabeth. Right, absolutely. In the New Testament, we've got those ringing bells. In the Old Testament, any stories in the Old Testament? Hannah, right, who is the mother of?
Boaz? No.
We'll get there.
Forgot.
Samuel, right. Which, by the way, Samuel and Samson are parallels. So both of them have a very similar start. They have different finishes. And the different finishes are based on their motivations. So Samson is kind of the anti-Samuel, if that makes sense. All right. Also, Abraham, right? Abraham, Sarah doesn't have a kid, Rebecca. So you've got this idea that there's going to be a supernatural thing. Now, I got a question. Does it look like she's praying for a kid right here? No? So it looks like God is stepping in there and being gracious and being supernaturally gracious. And that's grace. We see that a lot of that. Now, there is some positive things. Let me tell you some, just for your Bible nerds. How many of you want to be Bible nerd? Okay. He is from the tribe of, what tribe did we just see he was from? Dan. Is the tribe of Dan generally a good tribe or a bad tribe? They're a bad tribe.
Yeah.
They're often they're accused of leading their brothers into paganism. And specifically, do you remember when in Joshua, Dan has this area that's supposed to be kind of west of Judah and going to go into where the Philistines are at. And they look at it and they say it's too hard, and then they go up north, right? And they leave and they go up north. So most of the tribe rejects where God tells them to go and go somewhere else. However, Manoah is from Dan, and guess where he's at? He's in the spot he's supposed to be. As a matter of fact, we're going to see later on there's a place that's called something Dan, Manoah Dan or something like that. Not Manoah Dan, but it's related to that. And essentially what it means is like refugee camp. So there is a group of Danites who did not leave. Though the rest of the tribe rejected their call and where they were supposed to be, Manoah is part of the Danites that are where they're supposed to be. So this is just one indicator that Manoah is a good guy. So is his wife. So be careful. All right, so this is what the angel of the Lord tells Manoah's wife. He says, be careful, you must not drink wine or any alcoholic drink, do not eat forbidden food, and you will become pregnant and give birth to a son, and his hair must never be cut, for he will be dedicated to God as a Nazarite from his birth. He will begin to rescue Israel from the Philistines. All right, so he's got a great plan for him. So what are the things that are not supposed? So she's not supposed to do it, and he's also not supposed to do it. So what are the three things? No alcohol.
No forbidden fruit.
No bad food.
Cut hair.
And cut hair. Those are the three things. All right. So you don't know everything about Nazarite vow, but you know those three things. All right. Now the woman, she knows the angel of the Lord is not an everyday person, so she shows up and she goes to her husband. She says, a man of God appeared to me. He looked like one of God's angels, terrifying to see. I didn't ask who he was, who he was from, and he didn't tell me his name, but he told me that you'll become pregnant and give birth to a son, and you must not drink wine or other alcoholic drinks, nor eat any forbidden food. Your son will be dedicated as a Nazarite from the moment of his birth until the day of his death. By the way, spoiler alert, those are the two times that he is actually faithful. His moment of his birth and the day of his death. So, in the middle, it's going to get iffy. But there you go. That's kind of the sense of it. Then Manoah. Now, Manoah is acting as the spiritual head of his family. With Manoah, we see a good dad, right? So what's he doing? He prays to who?
Lord.
Yahweh. He's not praying to whatever God is out there. He is trying to be faithful, saying, Lord, please let the man of God come back to us again and give us more instructions about the son who is to be born. There's nothing bad about what he's doing. He's taken his authority or his responsibility right. The woman is doing great. The man is doing great. The father and mother knocking it out of the park. 10 out of 10. As a matter of fact, these are like Mary and Joseph level kind of successful parenting. So God answers Manoah's prayer, and the angel of God appeared once again. Okay, so the man of God, that phrase could mean anything. A man of God could be an angel, could be a prophet, could be a messenger from God, it could be the angel of the Lord. It's the whole spectrum of that sort of stuff. So they're trying to figure out what's going on. And it says, and the angel of God appeared once again to his wife, and she was sitting in the field, but her husband Manoah was not with her. So she quickly ran and told her husband, the man who appeared to me the other day is here again. Manoah ran back. You see, all of these verbs, everything sounds like they're being obedient. They're doing the right thing. Back with his wife and asked, are you the man who spoke to my wife the other day? Yes. He said, I am. By the way, the yes, I am right there, that's kind of reminiscent of the I am kind of God statements, which should give us a clue that we're not just talking about a random angel, we're talking about God. The angel of the Lord. And sometimes in the Old Testament, the angel of the Lord is actually the Lord. Does that make sense? That's a hard one for us to understand. There's a couple places where where what'll happen is like Abraham will be talking with an angel, and then as he's talking with him, he's talking to him as if he's God, because it's the same. In the Old Testament, you had kind of the God the Father, and then you had the angel of the Lord who would sometimes walk with man. So when we look in the New Testament, we see God the Father and we see the Son. And when Jesus says, before Abraham was, I was, that's a sense that Jesus is confirming that before he was born in Bethlehem, he actually walked as the angel of the Lord. Does that make sense? So this is one of those senses of this. So Manoah asked him, when your words come true, what are the kind of rules that should govern the boy's life and work? And I love this. What's he say? He goes, the angel of the Lord said, be sure to follow what your wife said. So he's like saying, hey, your wife was faithful. She got the instructions. She must not eat grapes or raisins or wine or other alcoholic drinks or even touch forbidden food. That's the sense of it, because she's pregnant, and what she eats, the baby eats. That's the sense of it. He's like, he's going to be a Nazarite. Then Manoah said to the Lord, please stay here until we can prepare a young goat for you to eat. This is the same thing that we see with Gideon. This is the same kind of obedience. We're gonna be faithful. We're gonna have a meal to celebrate this blessing. I will say, the angel of the Lord replied, but I will not eat anything. However, you may prepare a burnt offering as a sacrifice to the Lord. Manoah didn't realize that it was the angel of the Lord at this point, right? He's like, okay, we just think a prophet gave a message from the Lord. And this is a great message. We're going to celebrate it. Then Manoah asked the angel of the Lord, what's your name? For when this comes true, we want to honor you. They want to say, hey, listen, it was the prophet, whoever, that told us that this boy was going to happen. And he says, why do you ask my name? The angel of the Lord said, it is too wonderful for you to understand. And they're like, wait a second. Why? Why is it too wonderful? Because his name is Emmanuel. Because his name is Yahweh Saves. That's why. But he's like, just deal with what I'm telling you right now. It's big for you. When Manoah took a young goat in grain offering and offered it on the rock as a sacrifice to the Lord, and as Manoah and his wife watched, the Lord did an amazing thing. The flames from the altar shot upward to the sky, and the angel of the Lord ascended in the fire.
This feels very Jesus-y.
This feels very, oh my gosh, right? Oh my God. That is exactly the sense of it, right? That is what they're saying. When Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell on their face to the ground. The angel of the Lord did not appear again to Manoah or his wife. Manoah finally realized that it was the angel of the Lord, and he said to his wife, we will certainly die, for we have seen God. They recognize how unholy they are, how impure they are when they see the purity of God, and it's frightening. But his wife said, and again, I love his wife. His wife we don't know her name. Is it interesting we don't know her name? We don't know her name, but we know her faithfulness. We know her by her character. And I love that about her. But his wife said, if the Lord was going to kill us, he wouldn't have accepted our burnt offering and grain offering. He wouldn't have just appeared to us and told us the wonderful things that he's going to do to us. There's a sense where I love that Manoah is taking the spiritual headship of his family. I love that he's doing all this sort of stuff. I would say that while he's doing all that sort of stuff, we're seeing the wife right here might have a little bit better sense. Whereas he understands God, he understands the fear of God, which, by the way, is a good place to start. To fear God is a good place to start. But she's got an idea of the grace of God. Listen, we deserve to be consumed in flame, but obviously God isn't choosing to consume us in flame. That there's grace. She sees the grace in him, and I love that about her. So the parents of Samson are amazing. And remember, as we've been progressing through, we've been seeing a lot of the failures of the judges as we've come through. Samson, we're going to see the biggest story about Samson. It's going to spread 4 chapters. The only person that's like it would be Gideon, and the difference in faithfulness of Gideon's much more faithful than Samson is, so we see kind of the decay that's been happening over the 400 years. But what we see here, one thing we cannot say that like Jephthah he was the child of a prostitute, right? And then Abimelech was the child of out of wedlock kids. So both of those judges, they had horrible beginnings. Samson, you can't want for better parents. They're being faithful in a difficult time. They're faithful. They pray to God. They try to do everything right. We love them. When her son was born, she named him Samson. And the Lord blessed him, and he grew, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir in him, and they lived in that Manasseh, Dan right there. That means the encampment of Dan, or whatever. It's this idea of this refugee camp. Yes.
Do you know what Samson means?
Samson is okay. So here's the one thing that's a little bit interesting. It seems to come from the word sun. And there is a town in the area that was named the Temple of the Sun. So that's a little concerning. but I don't know. I think Samson and Samuel sound similar on purpose. So I don't know if it's significant that his name is the sun, but it's based on the sun in the sky. Now where they're at is, here's something else, because we've been looking at the geography a lot. Really interesting. Where they live is a village that is about 4 miles from Kiriath Arba. Do you remember how? Okay, so you had Caleb. He defeated the giants, and he made his city Hebron, right? And then his son-in-law went to Kiriath Darbar, and he did that. This place is not very far from those events in kind of the area of Judah. So really close to where God's worked powerfully. Kind of sandwiched in between there and the Philistine cities. It's located between the towns of Zorah and Ashtaol. One day when Samson was in Timnah, one of the Philistine women caught his eye, and he returned home and he told his father and mother, a young Philistine woman in Timnah caught my eye and I want to marry her. Get her for me! Okay, now. Okay, let me just say this. Samson, so the Israelites in Judah and all this area have been enslaved by the Philistines for how many years? 40 years. Samson is supposed to rescue them. Is he doing any rescuing right now? What is he doing? Well, we get an idea what he's doing. I seen a hot woman, I want her as my wife. Now, there's a phrase here that's not so good that we see kind of with Samson a little bit. It's like, it's pleasing to my eye because it looks good with my eye. I want to eat it, is the idea. It's pleasing to my eye. It's the same kind of thing that Eve and Adam do in the Garden of Eden, where they're like, that fruit is pleasing to my eye, I want it. What does God want you to have? Well, not that, but I want it. So, he wants a Philistine woman. Why? Because he thinks she's hot. Is he making any decisions along the purpose of God's life, or the purpose that he has for? No, he is not following his purpose of rescuing Israel from the Philistines. He is saying, I want a Philistine. His father and mother objected. Isn't there even one woman in our tribe or among all the Israelites that you could marry? They asked, why must you marry a pagan Philistine as to find a wife? But Samson said, get her for me. She looks good to me. Again, it's eyes. Okay, not good. They should have listened to the counsel of his parents. Now, where are they at? They're in a refugee camp of Danites in the middle of Judah. So, they have descendants of Dan that they can marry. They have descendants of Judah that they can marry. And they're right next to Simeon, the tribe of Simeon. So Simeon, and by the way, there's Levites in the area. So there are 4 tribes worth of Israelites within a rock's throw of where Dan is at. Within 5 miles, he's got women from all those tribes. And he doesn't want any of those. Now, the Philistines. Who are the Philistines? The Philistines are not the Canaanites that they're not supposed... Okay, it just said a lot of knots. When they were to move into the land, there was a group of Canaanites. There were groups of Canaanites they were not supposed to intermarry with. Right? And part of the reason that they weren't supposed to intermarry with it, because if they intermarried with it, they'd have legal rights to be governed by Canaanites, and God wanted to say, I'm giving you this land. It's not yours from the Canaanites. There's a sense of that. The Philistines weren't in that prohibited list. So could you marry a Philistine woman and still be Jewish and everything good? Yes. But the problem is if they stay Philistine when they marry to you, because what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to convert to your tribe and worship your God. Makes sense, right? So the problem that the mom and dad have isn't just that she's Greek. And by the way, who the Philistines are? The Philistines are essentially a Greek colony that starts showing up in, or Crete, or it's Minoan or Greek or something that came in, and so they still worship kind of like Zeus and Poseidon and all of those things, although they use Canaanite names for those same kind of gods. So that's what it is. It's a European colony. So yeah, he could have her if she converted. That's the sense of it. But what we're going to see is that's not what he wants. He says, "Get her for me because she's hot," right? That's what he says. His father and mother didn't realize that the Lord was working in this, creating an opportunity to work against the Philistines who ruled over Israel at this time. In other words, he wasn't doing his job when he was told to, the way he was told to, so God's going to get him to do it the other way. So he's taking plan B. Plan B is never good. Take plan A. If God tells you to do something, do it that way. That's always the better way. It's always better than getting eaten by the fish, right? If God tells you to go to Nineveh, go to Nineveh. Don't go the opposite direction and try to get eaten by a fish. Don't do it. That's the sense of it, and that's what he's doing. So Samson and his parents were going down to Timnah. Oh, I should say this, Timnah. How do we also know this is sketchy? The only other place that we see Timnah before this is the story of, this is for extra credit for Bible scholars, Tamar. So when Abraham is going to go shear his sheep and sees a prostitute and sleeps with a prostitute, it is in Timnah. Timnah is the sense. So there's a sense where, and what happens there is God deceives Abraham, God deceives Judah, I said it wrong, Judah, so that he would sleep with Timnah and do all that stuff. What he should have done the right way, has to do the wrong way on the way to Timnah. This is the same sort of thing. So there's an echo of God doing the same sort of thing in the same place. Now we may not see Timnah like this, but we have towns that if I said it in the story, then you'd go, I bet you I know it. What if I said and Abraham or whoever and Samson was on his way to Las Vegas? What are we thinking he's going to be doing? Probably not good stuff, right? Right? That's the sense of it. So we kind of see that same sort of stuff. So he's going to Timnah, and he goes, when Samson was on his way down to Timnah, a young lion suddenly attacked Samson near the vineyard of Timnah. Okay, the vineyard of Timnah. So he's in the vineyard. Should Samson be in a vineyard? Probably not, because that's got the grapes and the wines and the raisins and everything. You ought not be around. But that's where he's at. At that moment, the Spirit of God, the Lord, came upon him, and he ripped the lion's jaws apart with his bare hands, and he did it easily as if it were a young goat. But this is not a very ASPCA-friendly story. I think, that was like when I tear apart young goats. You're like, you shouldn't be tearing apart young goats. But there you go. But he didn't tell his mother and father about it. When Samson arrived in Timnah, he talked with the woman, and they were very pleased with her. Later, when he returned to Timnah for the wedding, he turned on the path and he looked at the carcass of the lion, and he found a swarm of bees that had made some honey in the carcass. He scooped up the honey. Why? Because he wanted honey. With his hands, and he ate it along the way. He also gave some to his mother and father, and they ate it. But he didn't tell them where he had taken the honey from, the carcass of a lion. Why is that?
He didn't tell me he killed the lion.
It was forbidden to touch dead things. Remember I said don't eat forbidden food? What would be forbidden food? Something out of a dead thing. If you were a Jew listening to this story, you'd go, what are you doing? They would be as grossed out because it's ceremonial and unclean to be eating off of the corpse. Of course, we, 21st century, if I said, I got this out of the gut of an animal, you'd be like, you honey out of the gut of an animal? No, thank you. Because we would be afraid of it for bacteria sense, right? Rightly so. It is not only is it ceremonially unclean food for the Israelites. For Samson, who's a Nazarite, it's also unclean for his parents. So the sin of the son is now covering onto the parents, and it's just so sad. As the father was making final arrangements for the marriage, Samson threw a party at Timnah, and as was the custom for the elite young men, when the bride's parents saw him, they selected 30 young men he needed bridegrooms, right? So they got 30 men, right, from the town. Samson said to them, let me tell you a riddle. If you solve this riddle in 7 days of the celebration, so they're going to party for 7 days. How are they partying probably? Drinking. I will give you 30 fine linen robes and and 30 sets of festive clothing. But if you don't solve it, then you must give me 30 fine linen robes and 30 fine sets of clothing. All right, they agreed. Let's hear your riddle. So now he gives this riddle. He goes, out of one who eats came something to eat, and out of strong came something sweet. So what's he thinking of? The lion and honey is what he's thinking. Now, does this sound like a stupid riddle to you? It's like telling you, what's the riddle? The riddle is, tell me what I ate for breakfast 4 days ago. Right? That's how I heard of this. Now, I'll just tell you this. It actually isn't that bad. It actually is kind of a riddle in the original language, because the word for lion and the word for honey are very, very, very similar sounding. So think of it as if it was like homophones. So in which you'd say, imagine if the word for honey and the word for lion were the same. And you say, what eats things? Well, lion is an eater of things. And what is sweet? Well, honey is if it was the same word. If we said, well, lion is what is sweet and the lion is what eats things. So there is a sense that it is a legitimate. There is a way that they probably could have understood it. 3 days later, they were still trying to figure out on the fourth day. They said to Samson's wife, entice your husband in explaining the riddle to us, or we will burn down your father's house with you in it. Did you invite us to the party to make us poor? So Samson's wife came to her in tears, and then for 3 more days just cried nonstop. You don't love me. You hate me. You've given me You've given my people a riddle, and you didn't. You haven't told me the answer. Now I have the question: whose people should she be part of right now? Her husband's people. But she's not. She's still being Philistine. She's not coming into the tribe of Dan. So there's a problem here. I haven't even given the answer to my father or mother here. I haven't even given an answer to my own father and mother. Why should I tell you? And then she cried, and when she was with him and kept it up for the rest of the celebration. At last, on the 7th day, he told her, because she was tormenting him and nagging. You're such a nag! Nag, here it is. Then she explained the riddle to the young men. So before the sunset of the 7th day, the men came into town and they said, what's sweeter than honey and what's stronger than a lion? And Samson said, if you hadn't plowed with my heifer. What a phrase. If you hadn't plowed with my heifer. Heifer's a cow, right? Normally you don't plow with a cow, but there's a sense of, there's something, right? That there's something untoward happened. That essentially that she betrayed me. You wouldn't have solved this riddle. Then the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully on him, and he went down to Ashkelon, which is one of the Philistine cities, and he killed 30 men there, and he took their belongings and their clothing, and he gave it to the men who solved the riddle. But Samson was furious, and he went back home, and he went with his mother. So his wife was given in marriage to his best man, Samson's best man, as was the custom, because he didn't fulfill his promise. The marriage covenant. Now here's the deal. Was he supposed to kill those men in Ashkelon already? Yes. Why? Because that's one of the ruling cities that was ruling over the top of Judah and Dan. So he should have gone to war already. So he doesn't go to war until, it suits him. So God has to make a situation where it suits him. And that's not good. That's not a good sign. So God is getting what he wants accomplished, which is the tearing down of the strength of Ashkelon, but it's not through obedience, it's through, essentially pushing Samson. Later on during the wheat harvest, Samson took the young goats as a present to his wife, and he said going to his wife's room to sleep with her, but his father wouldn't let him in. He said, "No, you can't do that. She's not your wife. I truly thought that you hated her," she said, and exclaimed. "So I gave her in marriage to your best man. But look, her younger sister is even more beautiful than she is. Marry her instead." There's a sense of he still wants to be friends with Samson. He still wants to do this sort of stuff, but it's, Samson says, well, this is what he says. Samson gets mad. He goes, "This time I cannot be blamed for anything that I do against you Philistines." Well, he should be blamed anyway, because that's his role was to attack the Philistines to free them from 40 years of servitude. But now he's like, no, well, now it's not my fault that I'm killing you. Then he went out and he caught 300 foxes. He tied their tails together, and he fastened them a torch to each of their tails. And he lit the torches, and he let the foxes run through the field of grain of the Philistines, and it burned all the grain on the ground, the sheaves and the uncut grain, and it also destroyed the olive trees, olive groves, and vineyards. Okay. Just a question. Is this what judges are supposed to be doing? If God tells them to do, but he has not been telling them. Part of the idea of if he killed the Philistines, then the tribe of Dan would come there, and then what would they eat? I have taken you to a land where you're going to eat the grain on the ground that you didn't plant, and you're going to eat. That's why when they go in, they're not supposed to be cutting down the trees. They're not supposed to be doing it. But he's not. He's just he's an emotional monster. So when we see this total war, we're not supposed to go, "Oh, good, Samson." We're supposed to go, "Samson, I'm not sure that's how you're supposed to be playing the game." "Who did this?" the Philistines demanded. "Samson," they replied, because his father-in-law from Timnah gave Samson's wife to be married to his best man. So the Philistines went and they found a woman and her father, and they burned them to death. "Because you did this," Samson vowed, "I won't rest until I take my revenge on you." So he attacked the Philistines with great fury and killed many of them. Then he went to live in the cave in the rock of Edom. Now he's in the area of the Simeonites, or Simeon followers within kind of that greater Judah region. That's where he's hiding. The Philistines retaliated by camping in Judah and spreading out near the town of Leah. The men of Judah asked the Philistines, "Why are you attacking us?" The Philistines replied, "We've come to capture Samson. We've come to pay him back for what he did." So 3,000 men of Judah went down to get Samson in the cave in the rock of Edom. And then they said to Samson, "Okay, so who are these guys coming? 3,000 men from where? Are they rallying to the judge?" "Oh, Judah, how you fallen?" What should they do? They should do what we see every other place when a judge comes up and he says, "Men of Judah, let's attack the oppressors and drive them out. As Yahweh said, as for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. This area, we're going to take it," right? That's what they're supposed to do. Instead, they're working as vassals of the Philistines. So our heart breaks that the Judah, who started out the book of Judges doing the right thing, is now acting as a vassal of these pagans. "Don't you realize that the Philistines rule over us? What are you trying to do to us?" This is the same kind of thing that they said to Moses. "Why are you doing this with the Pharaoh? Why don't we follow the Pharaoh? Pharaoh's going to be mad." It's the same kind of voice. It's the same stuff. So we're supposed to see in the trajectory of the book of Judges, we see just this kind of decay. But Samson replied, "I only did this because what they did to me." But the men of Judah told him, "We have come to tie you up and your hands over and turn you over to the Philistines." "All right," Samson said, "but promise that you won't kill me yourselves. We will only tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines. They replied, we won't kill you. So they tied him up with 2 new ropes. And so in other words, he tied him up really good and brought him up from the rock. So Samson arrived at Lehi, this is in the midst of the area of Judah, and the Philistines came out shouting in triumph, but the Spirit of the Lord again came upon powerfully on Samson, and he snapped the ropes with his arms as if they were burnt strands of flax, and they fell from his wrists, and he found a jawbone of a recently deceased donkey, and he picked it up, and he killed 1,000 Philistines with it. Then Samson said, with this jawbone of a donkey, I have piled them in heaps. This is more rhyming. It's a better rap in Hebrew because donkey and heaps kind of are very similar words. So that's kind of he thought he was being clever. In Hebrew, he is being clever. In English, it's not quite as clever. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have killed 1,000 men. And he finished his boasting. He threw away the jawbone, and the place is known as Jawbone Hill. Samson was now very thirsty, and he cried out to the Lord, you've accomplished this great victory by the strength of your servant. Now must I die of thirst? Samson. And fall into the hands of these pagans, so God caused water to gush out from the hollow in a rock, which is very much God's grace. God is showing grace, isn't he? Samson's being ungrateful and all this, but God still is showing grace and love. So he gives them water miraculously, and they call the place. So then Samson, called the place, what's he call it? The spring of the one who. So he named it after who?
Himself.
Samson. God miraculously answers you, pours out water out of a rock, and you decide to name the place not after God, but after you? So again, Samson, pig-headed, selfish, only doing the right thing because God is poking him to do the right thing, right? Not from the right motivation, because he's still judging everything by his eyes. What he wants, what I will have, I will do. He's calling God evil, essentially, for rescuing him, but not giving him water. All of these things. So then it goes with this. And Samson judged Israel for 20 years during this period when the Philistines dominated the land. So at this point, you're like, oh, well, that wasn't so bad, Samson. Well, we still got another couple chapters. 2 more stories we're going to hit really quick. These stories we're going to hit a lot faster because they're going to follow the same pattern. So the 3 stories they pull out the story of his wife in Timnah, and that's not good. Then we see here, one day Samson was in the Philistine town in Gaza, and he spent the night with a prostitute in the middle of Gaza, which is one of the 5 cities of the Philistines. He spent the night with a prostitute. Word soon spread that Samson was there, and the men of Gaza gathered together and waited all night in town gate. And he kept quiet during the night, saying to themselves, when the light of the morning comes, we'll kill him. But Samson stayed in bed only until midnight, and then he got up, and he took hold of the doors of the town gate, and including the doorposts, he lifted them all up, the bar and all, and he put them on his shoulders, and he carried them all the way to Hebron, across the hill to Hebron. Okay, here's the deal. A city that doesn't have its gate doesn't have its walls anymore. Does that make sense? So functionally, by taking the city gate, you have taken the city. So the city cannot withstand an army anymore. So he pacified it just by carrying it. Now, some people will look at this and say, well, maybe he didn't take it all the way to Hebron because Hebron's a long ways away. So maybe it's just on a hill on the way to Hebron, is what some people say. But let me tell you this. If you can lift up thousands of pounds of wood and carry those off, you're already outside what normal people do. So, yeah. God has to be involved in any way of this. It's not Samson's a really strong man. There's a sense of this. But that's the sense of it. So now Gaza is pacified. Gaza is pacified because of his being there for the wrong reasons. But God still is using even his sin for his purposes. Sometime later, Samson fell in love with a woman named Delilah, and we all have heard this story many times, who lived in the valley of Sorek. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, entice Samson and tell her that what makes him strong so that we can overpower him, and then each of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. So each of them. So there's 5. By the way, I said 1,100 in the first service. It's not 1,100. It would be from each of the 5 rulers. So he's talking about 55,000 pieces of silver, or 5,500 pieces of silver. That's a lot. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me what makes you strong so that we can, what it would take you to tie you up more securely. Samson said, if you tie me with new bowstrings that haven't been dried up, then I'll be weak as anybody else. So that they did it. And then she goes, Samson, they're upon you. And he breaks them and he beats them up, right? And then later, and then she cries, let's see, burn. So the strength was not discovered. Afterwards, Delilah said, you've been making fun of me, telling me lies. Now, tell me how to tie you up securely. And he goes, if you use brand new rope, I'll be as weak as anybody else. So she ties him up with brand new rope. Okay, so he's like, all right. Samson, the Philistines are upon you and capture you. So but Samson again snapped the ropes and there's no problem. Then Delilah said, you've been making fun of me. Now tell me how to do it more slowly. And he says, if you weave my 7 braids into fabric loom, then I'll be in a loom shuttle. So she makes a rug out of his hair, right? That's a weird thing. Okay. But here's the deal. He is getting closer and closer to the last thing. Now, what was he not supposed to do at the very beginning? He was not supposed to eat wine, and we've seen him eating wine and drinking grapes and all that. We're supposed to not eat unclean things. We've seen him eat unclean things. The last thing is not cut his hair. So this is the very minimum that he has for this. And so finally he's even teasing and he gets it close. Well, it's my hair, but it's got to be woven, Then Delilah says, how can you say that I love you, but you don't share your secrets with me? You've made fun of me 3 times, and you haven't told me what makes you so strong. So she was tormented. He was so tormented by her nagging. Again, he still is more subject to other people's nagging and more subject to what he wants by his own eyes, that he is not a strong leader. He is worse than a strong leader. He pushes away because he's so emotionally not following Yahweh's rules and all this, and it's just sad. So, of course, finally, as we know, my hair's never been cut. He confessed, for if I was dedicated to God as a Nazarite, as a child, if my head was shaved, then my strength would leave me and become as weak as anyone else. Now, do you think that it's really true? I don't know if he believes this anymore. I think he just thinks he's strong. Because God told him not to eat wine and eat grapes, and he's done that. He told him not to eat unclean food, and he's already done that. I think he thinks it's his strength. Delilah realized that he had finally told her the truth, so she went sent back to the Philistine rulers, come back one more time, she said, and finally told me a secret. So the Philistine rulers returned with the money in hand. Delilah lulled Samson to sleep with her head in his lap, and then she called out to the man, and they shaved the 7 locks of his hair. In this way, she began to bring him down, and his strength left him. And then she cried out, Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you. And when he woke up, he thought, I will do as before and shake myself free. But he didn't realize that the Lord had left him. That it wasn't about the glory of Samson. Although that's all he's lived for, is the glory of Samson. So the Philistines captured him and gouged out his eyes, and they took him to Gaza. And when they bound him in chains and forced him to grind grain in prison, but before long his hair began to grow back. There's a sense of purpose. Then the Philistines ruler held one great festival during the sacrifice, offering sacrifices and praises to their god Dagon. They said to him, our God has given us victory over our enemy Samson. When his people saw him, now is it their God that gave him victory? It's Samson's sin that gave him victory. When the people saw him, they were praising their God. And God has delivered our enemy to us, and the one who has killed so many of us is now in our power. Half drunk by now, the people demanded bring out Samson so that he can amuse us. So they brought him from the prison to amuse them, and they had him stand between the pillars that supporting the roof. Samson asked a young servant who was leading him by the hand. He said, "Place my hand against the pillars and hold up the temple. I want to rest against them." Now the temple was completely filled with people, and all the Philistine rulers were there, and there were about 3,000 men and women on the roof who were watching as Samson amused them. And Samson prayed to the Lord, "Sovereign Lord, remember me again. Oh God, please strengthen me just one more time for one blow to let me pay back the Philistines for the loss of my 2 eyes." The Philistines Samson put his hands on the 2 center pillars that held up the temple. He pushed against them with both hands, and he prayed, "Let me die with the Philistines." And he did. Here's one thought, one observation. What did the Philistines take from him?
His eyes.
His eyes. What had led him away the whole story?
His eyes.
His eyes. There's a sense where even the taking of his eyes, in a sense, was God working a blessing for him, because he's not coveting and wanting what the Philistines have at this point, and then is able to act as the judge of the Philistines and the Philistine gods. That's the idea. This is a judgment not just against the Philistines. This isn't just a political judgment. They're like, our gods have defeated Yahweh. So their gods, their temple, everything is destroyed in this. This is the one case. Now, I know Samson's very selfish, and you can almost hear it here, let me get back for the loss of my eyes. But this is the one time that he's not doing something that really advances him, too. So there's a sense of goodness in his sacrificial death here. And the temple crashed down on the Philistine rulers and all the people. So he killed more people when he died than he did during his whole lifetime. Later, his brothers and other relatives went down to get his body. They took him back home and buried him between Zorah and Ashtaroth, and where his father Manoah was buried. Samson had judged Israel for 20 years. So we close out with Samson. So here's the thing with Samson. Samson, we see a flawed person that God uses. We also see the truth that just because God is using you doesn't mean that necessarily you are doing it for the right motivation. So we still have to check, are we doing it for our will or for God's will? Because it matters. Samson also sets up like a worst case scenario. Even though he starts out with all the benefits, having good church home, he grows up wild. Now, the amazing thing of God is God still works with him all the way through, and even to his last, God is willing to empower him to do his good work. But what we see with Samson is we see the cautionary tale. When we see Samuel, we're going to see all of these things, but mixed with a willingness to follow God. And the difference is, Samson, he doesn't call Judah to follow and be free. He doesn't lead in the right way. He is more like, Samson is very much like Hercules. He's very much a pagan hero. And we see it for all of the emptiness it is. Samuel, however, who is just going to be a few years away from Samson, when Samuel does it, what does Samuel end up doing? He ends up calling his nation back to follow. So he ends up having a circuit where he goes to all these places and preaches and starts turning the people's heart to Yahweh. So when we see the difference between, if we have a choice, we want to be Samuel, not Samson. Now there's another set of parallels that are very similar. Samson is very much like Saul as a king. And Samuel is very much like David. So when we look at our life, we want to be more like David than Saul. We want to be more like Samuel than Samson. Does God work powerfully through Saul? Yes. But Saul is not submitting to Yahweh. So because of that, his line ends. David submits to Yahweh, and because of that, his line is the one that brings forth Jesus, So that's what we see with this when we look at Samson. Now we're going to finish Judges after Samson. We end up looking at the nation at large. So there's not really judges in the last couple chapters. We just see a lot of awful stories. So next week we're going to look at all of awful stories. So that we see it's not just the heroes in Israel that have become pagans. We see that they're doing the same evil stuff in the land as Israelites that the Canaanites were doing before Israel came in. So what we should do is we should go, man, God just should send a flood. By the time we get to the end of Judges, we're like, God just send a flood. But he doesn't. He sends Samuel. And Samuel starts turning the hearts back toward, and we start getting ready for David. Does that make sense? All right, that's where we're at. Let's go, Lord, in prayer. Father God, we thank you for your word, which continues to shape and challenge us. Lord, we pray, help us not be disobedient, and help us not be trying to live our life with your name on the marquee, but our will in our hearts, like Samson, but instead help us be like Samuel. Help us listen to your voice even from children on up. Help us continually try to serve you, Lord, and continue to try to point everybody toward you. May we be faithful like Samuel, and may we always be seeking to do those good things that you had outlined for us before we were even born. Lord, we thank you, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Of all those things, again, I just want to end you with the last encouragement. The one person that we see that is long-suffering, that is gracious, and that is loving is God. Even in the story of Samson, we continue to see his long-suffering and his love. So, all right, guys. I want to send you out with a blessing as you head out. I pray the Lord bless you and keep you, that he makes his face to shine upon you, that he's gracious to you, and that he grants you peace. Amen. All right, guys. It is awful quiet. See if anybody's still here. Did everybody leave?